Good morning again, everyone from around the world, I suppose, because we really have today a Tribe Global Masterclass that is connecting I'm calling from Europe, from the heart of Europe. And I'm sure we have lots of people connecting in from Asia, as I say, this morning, probably this afternoon, around the other side of the planet. So welcome everyone from around the world to this Tribe Global Masterclass. I'm Daniel. I'm one of the council members and former chair of Tribe Global, and I'm happily managing the Tribe Academy. So for those of you who don't know Tribe Global, we're an international agency network, independent agency network from around the globe. And we work together for strong brands to deliver great projects for their brands, for their communication strategies, etc. We're a group of independent, best-of-class agencies. And we're happy to have among one of our members to have the Orange Blowfish from Shanghai, who's one of our members. So the Tribe Global Academy is one of our internal programs that allows members to share knowledge between them. We have regular topics of high interest, let it be meta, AI, data, or very practical elements on how to manage clients, pitches, projects, news from the markets, new tech insights, etc. So it's mostly a service provided from members, from partners of the network to other members. But today we have the pleasure to open ourselves up. So we have opened this masterclass to all the people around the world who would be interested to join in and listen to Natalie Lowe. And this is the moment for me also to welcome Natalie to this masterclass. Good morning, Natalie, or good afternoon, Natalie. Great to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you as a member in Tribe Global, and it's great to have you as a very renowned speaker because you're regularly doing keynote speeches. You're a TEDx speaker. Yeah, you have an amazing bio. I really have to admit that I'm really impressed to read through your bio. So you're of Australian heritage, and you have created like 12 years ago. You have created the Orange Blowfish in Shanghai, and
Yes.
uh, and with that, you've created an amazing agency that reaches across the planet with a global team of people who are strong in brand strategy, good market expertise, and you working with brands who are looking for a strong market presence in China and APAC. Combining consumer-focused business strategy with award-winning branding campaigns. That's what I read from your bio. And I had the pleasure to see some of your reference, and I can totally validate what I just read. It's amazing the job you do with Orange Blowfish. So it's great to have you with us today because we all know globalization, internationalization, moving into different markets is a challenge for all of us. We, as Tribe Global, as an international network, know something about that, but our member agencies even know more about that because you're in the market. You know what it's like for international brands that try to move into local markets. What are the barriers? What should they really do to succeed in these markets? And I think those are some of the topics that you're going to probably talk about today. So with that, without further ado, I would like again to thank you for being with us and open the stage for your presentation, Natalie, on creativity, localization, international DNA. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you so much to the Tribe Global team, community, friends who have been able to make today and this evening possible. As Daniel mentioned, I am Natalie Lowe. I'm the CEO and founding partner of the Orange Blowfish, and it's an extreme privilege and honor to be hosting today's masterclass. A little bit about the Orange Blowfish before we begin. As Daniel mentioned, we are an award-winning creative and branding agency who are independent with our global headquarters based in Shanghai. We have teams in North America, Australia, and also in the UK, working with Fortune 500 and local brands to unleash the power of creativity through leveraging storytelling, art, space, and technology. We cut across three sectors: retail, hospitality, and B2B. Some of the clients who we work with that you may have heard of include Lululemon, Arc'teryx, Anta Sports Group, Cartier, L'Oreal Group, Hilton Hotel Group, Marriott Hotel Group, and many more. So before we jump into localization strategies, what I would like to do is share a little bit about housekeeping rules. Now, number one, I know that we are extremely busy people, and for some of you, you are just starting your day. What I would like to recommend is you put your phone on silent, and if you do need to take a call, please join us back as soon as you can. You will also need two additional things. Number one is a pen and paper. If you don't have that handy, please go and grab something that you can write on because we're going to have some creative warm-up exercises. And obviously, the success of today's masterclass is reliant on your full attention and also imagination. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to ask you two very simple but fundamental questions. And I want you to answer these questions as honestly as you can because you are not going to share these answers with anyone else but yourself. The first question is on a scale of 1 to 10, rate yourself as to how creative you think you are. 1 being not creative at all, and 10 being uber creative. The second question I want you to answer is what stops you from being creative? And please write down the first thing that comes to your mind that stops you with your creative juices. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do that. And your clock starts now. Okay, so if you have finished, well, fantastic. If you haven't, I'll give you some time to come back to that later. More importantly, let's look at creativity. Creativity in its simplest form is the ability to push boundaries, the ability to think of alternatives, and also do things differently. And you might be asking yourself, what has creativity got to do with me, my role, and also localization strategies? Well, to be honest, when we think about creativity, it's often at the bottom end of the food chain when it comes to business. It's often disregarded and downgraded as fluff. And when we think about creativity, many people associate creativity with being artistic, having artistic talents such as being a musician, an artist, as a designer. Many business executives or even brand managers may not necessarily associate themselves with being creative. However, everyone can benefit from a bit of creativity simply because you need to be creative to be an artist, but you don't need to be artistic to be creative. And the one brand that jumps into my mind all the time that has transformed this world through pioneering creativity is none other than Apple, where their slogan was think different. Now, when we think about Apple and what it is today, obviously its success didn't happen overnight. And when you think about their founder, Steve Jobs, he was an engineer. At no point did we ever thought that he was creative, but today he is considered a creative pioneer. And why is that? Is it because he produced PCs? No, it is because he really believed that he would be able to change the world one PC at a time through the interaction that humans will have with PCs throughout their lifestyle. And it is absolutely true. And as an engineer, I'm sure he pushed through many different boundaries. He innovated relentlessly and also thought about alternative solutions to actually change the world. Now, from thinking about apples, what I would like you to do is now think about lemons. And this is what we call about the lemon test. Simply because we have all squeezed lemon juice out of a lemon, I'm pretty sure more than once in our lives. And what I'm going to do is ask you to think about as many different ideas that you can to actually squeeze lemon juice out of lemon. And this is where your imagination and creativity kicks in. So if you have your pen and paper, also imagine that you're holding a lemon. And what I would like for you to do is in the next 30 seconds, think of as many ways that you're able to squeeze lemon juice out of a lemon to make lemonade. And again, you will not be sharing these answers with anybody. And your clock starts now. Okay, so if you're doing this for the first time, I just want to share some common observations. Many of us, when we think about the lemon test, we might be extracting from the practicality of solving a problem. So thinking about our experiences of how we can, in real life, extract lemon juice. So, for example, did you ever think about using force? Putting the lemon against a drawer, under a car, using a shoe, stamping on it. Okay, I can see Daniel shaking his head. Number two, did you ever use a utensil? Did you think about using a fork, a knife, a spoon, or something that would be able to extract lemon juice? And number three, the most common one is actually getting help. Now, I would like to remind everybody that this is a creative exercise. And what is really interesting is that we often apply our own daily experience to creative problems because, of course, every day in our lives, we've gotten to a certain level of experience and respect in our career and also where we are today. Now, what if I told you that I would be able to make that lemon squeeze out lemon juice without even touching it? I'll give you an example. So what about if I put the lemon on a treadmill so it would run 30 minutes and then squeeze out lemon juice? Sounds wild and crazy, right? But we're talking about thinking of alternatives and pushing boundaries. What about if I told the lemon a really crazy, sad story and then I would make it cry out the lemon juice? What about if, for example, I put the lemon under the sun and watched it bake for 30 minutes and then caught all the lemon juice? My point is, when we're always thinking about the practical ways of constraints, of how we can solve a problem to jump over specific hurdles that we face on a daily basis, we're not really being creative. So, what I want you to do right now is forget what you know. Being creative is about pushing boundaries, doing things differently, and also thinking about alternatives. And I want you to imagine being able to squeeze lemon juice out of that lemon without touching it. And now I'm going to give you 60 seconds to really break through. Your clock starts now. Go as wild and crazy as you can. No inhibitions. Twenty seconds on the clock. Okay, so when we usually do this, I do see a lot of people actually quite uncomfortable with the time and also breaking through boundaries. And it's quite interesting to know that creativity can be extremely inspirational. However, under pressure, with limited time, no resources, and absolutely no budget, it is very, very hard to be creative. However, in today's environment, when we think about creativity, we're often asked to perform at the highest level, at a higher frequency, not only in our own local markets that we're familiar with, but also in markets that are foreign and cultures that we don't understand. So when we think about localization, creativity can be really, really hard if you're unable to have that level support. However, in terms of localization right now for businesses and also for creative agencies, it is becoming quite easier and also a shortcut for brands to cut through in a global connected world. We're able to develop digital content that is shared on platforms that act like shortcuts to traverse across geographical time, space, and also boundaries. At the Orange Blowfish, we are asked to bridge cultural gaps every single day. And it's still surprising up until today that brands still come to us with a translation of their slogan and tell me that that is a localization strategy. When we think about localization, it's got to be one that resonates with the local market and also motivate them to change behavior, perspective, and also act. So in reality, we have to create reliability, trust, and relevance. So, for example, brands coming into China sometimes may assume that China is a homogenous market. I can tell you right now, similar to Europe, China is not a one size fit all. To put things into perspective, China has 23 provinces, four major cities, 56 ethnic groups, and seven major dialects. So when brands are coming into China, I'm asking which city, which region are they targeting? Also, when you look at a 27 young female in Chengdu, Shanghai, Beijing, or even Europe and Australia, they are not the same simply because of their lifestyle, their social attitudes, and also behavior. So it's really, really important to understand the local sentiment and also understand their nuances beyond a language. So, what I would like to do is share with you a couple of brands that have gotten it wrong. And you'll be surprised that they are quite the big boys as well. Now, you may remember this. In 2018, D&G ran a campaign which was titled D&G Loves China. Regardless of its intentions, it was considered offensive, racist, and it didn't go down well. If you don't remember the campaign, let me jot your memory. In a nutshell, it showed a Chinese model eating Italian food with chopsticks. In only 8 days, it ensued drama. It had boycott to sales and also a blow to stock prices, which resulted in $8 billion worth of losses. So, what this goes to show that you hit creative with sour notes and the results can be financially devastating. The next one is actually much more interesting, which is Nike. And Nike came to China in 2016 with a Chinese New Year campaign with all good intentions of putting out limited edition sneakers. And what they really wanted to say was getting rich in Chinese, which you can see on the back of those two sneakers. Technically, it is correct if you put the two words separately. But what happened was they didn't realize that when you put them two together, which means fa fu, in a local context, it means getting fat, which was extremely ironic for a company such as Nike that emphasizes about getting fit, that had all over the media titles during Chinese New Year, are these Nike shoes really telling China to get fat? So extremely, extremely interesting. And what we're seeing is that even with a seemingly fail-safe strategy, international brand DNA, regardless of how big or small or prestigious you are, can actually get lost in translation. And why is that? Simply because we believe that campaigns need to be culturally sensitive, and localized that will really, really go far, and they can only be elevated through creativity. Receiving local market validation and recognition is so important and relevant, and it is really the prize at the end. So even if your business is not about localizing an international brand or thinking about how your brand or your businesses is being perceived by the corporate culture, really understand what moves and drives them, how you can connect with them, and also how you can actually motivate them to have a call to action. So, in a nutshell, creativity is really about cultivating relationships. And when it comes to businesses and brand localization, this is extremely transformative. When it is done right, it is relevant, it is dynamic, it is transformative, communicative, personal, engaging, imaginative, and more importantly, emotionally top of mind. So, what can we learn from this is that creativity can really lead a change. It can have a shift in the perspective, not only in the hearts and minds of the consumer, but also behavioral support that can act a transaction that turns into an engaging relationship. So, at the core, creativity and localization strategies can really help you build messaging through various strands. And it's through this way, more than just translating your brand slogan into the local language. And what I would like to do is put a bit of objectivity into such a subjective matter. And please, by all means, we will be sending out an insights paper to share with everyone on this call so you don't feel the need to actually screenshot if required. But this is what we use on a daily basis, and it is our creative methodology that has been developed by the Orange Blowfish, and it is called LUCID, which stands for learn, understand, conceptualize, imaginate, deliver. And if any of you are a Matrix fan, it is really turning dreams into reality. And we spend a lot of time understanding, learning and understanding, conducting research and insights to conduct the consumer sentiment of how we can move the needle. After we do that, we combine that with the research to define the brand strategy and also to conceptualize what the brand positioning statement and the unique selling point will be along with the consumer journey. From there, we then go into what we call the imaginate, imagine and create. So therefore, it could come in many different forms, such as a localization of a brand strategy, creative strategy, the logo, the brand name, and also the messaging. And of course, the deliver, which is to produce, execute, plan, and refine. And what I'm going to do is share with you two case studies, one on the lucid approach and another one on another framework is what we call the ABCs. So this is a personal favorite of mine, Arc'teryx. For those who are familiar, they are a high-performing outdoor and apparel company. And it was so interesting because they came to us during the height of the pandemic, where they wanted us to be able to help them to promote outdoor wear and have them be top of mind. Now, what was quite interesting about that was we won this project in the height of pandemic when we weren't even able to leave outdoors. And so what we did was, instead of making it irrelevant to focus on the sales, we focused on the brand journey, knowing that they were going to promote their brand new casual daily wear called System A, which is inspired by sunlight going through the forest, called Komerobi. We actually developed a forest within the shopping center. And this is what we call the forest rebird. And as you can see here, it is a black box that was produced according to thousands of dots that are actually at the back that represent the northern coastal Canadian mountains. And here what you will see is a sun sphere, which is on a motorized track that will go across acting like the sun, which is going to take about 30 minutes to complete the rotation. And as you can see, what we tried to do was bring the experience of the forest to come into Shanghai and all the cities where there might be outdoor restrictions. Of course, at the time, it was very, very sensitive to not be able to do a hard sell. So we created an experience that focused on the six senses, which included sight, smell, hearing, and also social. And when we think about it, it was an individual experience that allowed you to go into the box and experience what it was like to be in a forest. So, with much ado, without having you wait, let me show you what the final result was. So creativity can come in many forms, and creativity enables brands to connect, to show, but not to tell. And these might relate in the forms of consumer touch points, from brick and mortar to even digital applications. In this specific experience, what we were able to do was create something that was visually impactful, artistically driven, and also experiential. And it was extremely important to really take into consideration a modern way of being able to connect to consumers who were unable to experience the outdoors, but more importantly, to keep it on top of mind and bring the urban jungle into different shopping centers. And what happened was we were building this experience during a time when it was uncertain, and also ensuring that the brand experience will be able to be portable and also transported across 3 different cities. Another framework that I would like to share with you is something what we call know your ABCs. And this is something that we use on a daily basis with a lot of different clients. And it's called being aspirational, knowing your brand heritage, and being able to connect with your audience. So here is a template that we use to make sure that everything that we do remains on brand. So for example, how do we enable brands to maintain their brand DNA, but then but make it resonate at a local level? Number one, what type of brand are we trying to be? Define how your brand wants to push boundaries while being aspirational, but then again, balancing it with the brand heritage and ensuring that the campaign and the localization is actually going to be true and stay on brand. The third thing is making sure that the moment and also the localization strategy is going to connect to a moment or even a point of action. So what is the moment that you can do connect this product and service to your audience? What is the call to action? And how are you going to make it emotional, relatable, and memorable? And the second case study that I want to share is something that is extremely close to my heart. And if you all know Marriott, Marriott has a brand called Moxie, and it is a stylish, playful hotel brand that delivers unconventional hotel experience. Moxie actually targets the modern traveler who is young and edgy. And in North America, in Europe, and also in Asia Pacific, they have almost 100 hotels. And what happened was they started breaking into China. And in 2021, they had launched a hotel in Shanghai. And the China market was actually looking for a higher demand of the Moxie hotels. And we were engaged to actually create the branding experience for 3 of their hotels across different cities such as Xi'an, Nanjing, and also Ningbo. So when you think about a young, playful brand like Moxie, compared to a rich cultural city like Xi'an, it's really, really hard to find that balance. And it was very important for us to be able to maintain Moxie's global brand DNA while also integrating Xi'an's local brand experience while enhancing the Moxie brand presence and awareness in China. Now, Moxie was located in the Beilin district of Xi'an, and it is in northwest China. Xi'an, for those who aren't familiar with it, has a history of more than 3,100 years and is home to 6 cultural relics, historic sites of the UNESCO World Heritage List. While Moxie celebrates nonconformity, open-mindedness, and originality above all, our biggest challenge was how do we balance the modernity of Moxie and also the rich local culture of Xi'an. So we had 2 challenges, was to break cultural cliches and modernize the image of Xi'an. Simply because when you think about Xi'an, you automatically think about the terracotta warriors. However, through our learn and understand phase, and also understanding the brand heritage of Xi'an, we discovered that the Qingqiang opera is a very, very powerful Chinese opera that was founded in Xi'an. In fact, the opera has long influenced China's modern rock scene, and Xi'an's music culture has been gaining significant traction and support. And what we see now is fast forward to 1,000 years, this music continues to be a strong part of Xi'an's culture. The way the locals celebrate with music varies. However, each type of musical performance celebrates the spirit that music brings to our souls. The other thing is we needed to tell the story of the modern hotel brand in a way that was going to not only entice tourists, but really entice the younger generation of Xi'an to understand more of the city and to bring these cultural references throughout the Moxie Hotel. And so I am going to share with you the video of what it looks like. most important point of the ABCs is connect. The creativity needs to make an emotional impact that is relatable and memorable in some way. We need to be able to find that golden nugget that has a connection with a brand that resonates with the consumers in the market that matters. And so, for that reason, it is really, really important that activating consumers through a clear call to action inspires a reaction. And what we need to understand is that we need a creative framework that is looked through a business lens. Creative concepts need to be pursued, as well as practicality, planning, production are activated. So, without the means to manifest, a creative idea remains just that. And part of the creative process sometimes is knowing that it isn't going to be a good idea. It might sound creative, but you aren't able to put it in practice. And that is where our lucid framework comes into action, is being able to break boundaries, but also having the market validation and understanding of the localization strategy to see if your local audience will respect it, understand it, and also appreciate it. And that involves brand authenticity, is actually not following the fad trends or any trend of the local market, but being true to yourself, being aspirational, and at the same time having a moment to connect with your consumers. So I'm going to leave about 10 to 15 minutes to Q&A, but I would like to leave you guys with one question that you would like to ponder about, is to benefit the boardroom, step outside of it. And you need to ask yourself, when you're activating localization strategies, how can I connect with my target audience and add a touch of relevance? And to that end, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very, very much, Natalie. That's been really very, very interesting, very, very inspiring.
Great.
I really like the approach that you have to really try to connect the brands and understand what's the local relevance. But immediately I would ask, are there any questions in our audience that you would like to take the advantage of having Natalie live on this call and ask a question concerning this? Okay, opening the chat. See if there's anything coming in. While waiting maybe for a question from our audience, a quick question from me. Let me see. A quick question. If you like, for example, if you take Moxie, a hotel in Xi'an, how do you manage the fact that who's going to be your audience? The people traveling to Xi'an and staying at the Moxie. Are you going to be Chinese mainland tourists, or in how far do you also attract international tourists who want to go there? So can there be a diversity in the audience, mainly if you're in tourism, hospitality, etc., where on one hand you have the local culture where you would like to connect with the local market, but there's also some kind of an international vibe where you try to attract these people. Can you connect the messaging for these two audiences?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to localization, there's definitely a primary target audience and there's a secondary. And in this particular instance, Moxie was launched in 2021 during a period where a lot of travelers were unable to come to China. So we identified the primary target audience as the locals within Xi'an who were young, who were edgy, who were artistic, and wanting to experience something different. If you've been to Xi'an, or even if you think about a suburb within your own local market that is a little bit outdated, has rich culture, but you're really yearning for something a little bit more exciting. That's really what we were making Xi'an and also Moxie the destination to be. So what we were figuring out was, it was during a period of time where there weren't a lot of travelers, not only through different cities, like from outside of Xi'an domestically, but there weren't a lot of travelers coming into China. So we had to make it a strategy that would work for the locals, simply because China in itself is 1.3 billion people, a third of the world's population. And after that, only when it puts it on the map can we also then attract the secondary audience, which is having a different alternative for people who really enjoy the rich culture but are willing to stay at a much young and edgy hotel while exploring the richness of the Siam culture. So for us, when we're actually doing localization strategies, it's really important to identify the primary and then also the secondary audience, but have a brand messaging, an umbrella message that will translate across different cultures.
You just addressed the topic. We talk about 1.3 billion people. We talk about almost a continent. It's huge from the north to the south, from the east to the west. Is China a single market?
No, not at all. It is not homogenous at all. There is not a one size fit all. And I think, it's quite interesting because a lot of clients will come to me, I want to go to Asia, and they will name every single country in Asia, from Thailand to China to Vietnam to Cambodia. It's like saying, I want to conquer Europe. Is it the Scandinavian? Is it Germany? Is it Spain? Is it France? It's impossible. So when we think about localization strategies, it's got to be very specific. If you're trying to target everyone, you're not targeting anyone at all. So when you're coming into China or going into Asia, we need to really understand which area are you going into. As I mentioned, China has 23 provinces, five major cities, which is Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou,
Hmm.
Shenzhen, 15 new tier one cities, 56 ethnic groups, and seven major dialects. So when we
Hmm.
take that into consideration, that's massive. And then taking into consideration Asia, Indonesia is very different from Thailand. Thailand is very different from Vietnam, even though they might be an hour away from each other. You look at Korea and Japan. So even though right now digitization is making it easier for us to get to markets because of the shared content, it is becoming increasingly more important for brands to be able to understand the local consumer and to speak to them directly. So, to answer your question, there is no one size fit all for any region, I would say, including Asia, which now excludes China anyway. China is a market in itself.
Yeah, totally get it. I imagine that would be the answer. But so I suppose then when you advise international brands coming into Asia or into China, there is the brand identity, there's the brand story, etc. But there's also a question of targeting, geographical targeting, audience targeting, etc. Be as precise as possible, because otherwise, I suppose the budget is going to be enormous. Are international brands, do you feel that they are consulting resistant, or have they understood after all these years the need to be accompanied or guided by people who know the market like you, like with experts who really can help them to avoid these shortcomings of just trying to
Yeah,
hit it?
so with brands who and we work with a lot of Fortune 500 brands and also Chinese brands who are going global. And what is really important is brands are taking a step-by-step approach when it comes to localization. They're looking at it on a regional level, and they're looking at a country level. And often when we're looking at brand localization, we will definitely take the global brand, the DNA, the messaging, what are the core pillars, and then really do consumer research to understand how this would resonate with the local market. And that's more than just a translation of the key pillars. It's really understanding what those messages and how those messages resonate with the local audience. And often they are tweaked in a way that would make the customers tick. So we're looking at it from a global level, then a regional level, and then a local level. And if you want to take it down the notch, when you look at China, then we take it down to the city level and maybe even to the regions.
Yeah, I once was at a conference of a young woman with her family who are producing wine in China, and they did a conference here in Europe. And in the audience, somebody asked, "Have you thought about exporting?" And she said, "Do you know how much we produce? Do you know how many people live in the city where we live in or in the region? It's already like country in Europe, so the size of the market. So it's a really completely different approach." But coming to what you just said, we have a great question from Gautam Dutt. Thank you very much for asking, because actually the question is, what was the most difficult localization campaign in China you ever had? Was, if you think about the brands or yeah, the markets you were in, is there a story you remember where you said this was really difficult or this was a huge challenge more than others?
Um, that's a really great question. I think, markets or brands coming into China, I think they're relatively easy, simply because easy is not the right word, but easier, simply because you're starting from zero. So therefore, you are able to be different. So if you have a 100-year legacy in the UK, for example, that may not necessarily mean very much if you're brand new coming into China. Now, what is extremely challenging is a brand that has a presence here and we need to rebrand because they are known for something specific, but they're looking at rebranding themselves for the next generation of leaders or even the next generation to be able to continue that brand legacy. And that could be even a refresh from the brand image right down to the brand messaging and the campaigns. And we have done that over the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic period, for a number of different brands that are strong in presence here, whether they're multinational brands or even local brands that are looking to modernize their own brand image and strategy for the future. So I would say definitely rebranding brands that already have a brand presence are the most challenging in any market.
Sounds that resonates, I think, with everybody in every market. It's always taking an idea away from what people have in mind. I have Adri from Leverate Asia, also very good friends, Leverate, Tribe Global. So Adri from Leverate asks, with the rise of AI and other forms of marketing tech, how do you think these tools would enhance the brand localization process, or have you already implemented them in your process? So
That is
AI,
a,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No. It was just
No,
you got the
please.
question.
No, please finish the question. Sorry.
No, it was, I just wanted to summarize. So I wanted to say, so tech, and how far does tech and AI influence what you do?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And like any other agency, I think it's really important, to measure efficiency and also leverage tech whenever you can. What is quite interesting is that AI will only compute data that's already been done. So if it hasn't been done before, it's extremely hard to write a strategy. So we have used and trialed a lot of different AI for many different reasons. For example, storyboarding, for example, perhaps using Midjourney to look at animation. However, because we are a creative agency where we are pushing creative boundaries, a lot of the styles, the ideas has never been done before. So we're unable in our line of work to leverage AI to give us what we need. AI, if it's mass produced or if it has done before where we're trying to scale for efficiencies, may actually work. But if we're trying to break through something new, it hasn't really worked for us at this point in time. So we're still relying on our team, talented humans to be able to develop the human interaction and connection that make brands connect with the local audience.
Yeah. Do you see a difference between B2B and B2C? Is it everything which is, of course, these fashion brands or lifestyle brands, hospitality, etc., or FMCG, but B2B, how is B2B behaving in your market?
It's quite interesting. At the beginning of my talk, I did mention that creativity, a lot of individuals will only associate it, the creativity with artistic talent. So people who are musicians, designers, or even artists. And it's very interesting in a corporate world that B2B companies mostly don't see that they need creativity as part of their line of work. But when we
Mm.
think about tech, when we think about medical, when we think about, giants like Alibaba, Google, what are they doing? They're becoming creative, they're becoming innovative in their way to actually push boundaries. And progressively, we are working with B2B companies in different ways, not necessarily as in a B2C form in selling directly to the customer, but how are we going to elevate them to be top of mind for all of their clients in different ways? It could be through employer branding. It might actually be through branding their space. It might be bringing their vision and their culture into communicating with clients. It might be breaking down very highly sophisticated technology in ways that can be absorbed and digested by individuals who don't understand. So there are levels of differences when it comes to creative strategy, but at the end of the day, B2B companies and brands are still speaking to humans who are going to make decisions at the end of the day.
Yeah, very interesting. There's a question that is aligned somehow with the complexity of this. This is Turab, our friend from India, who says in India there's multiplied the localization complexity is multiplied by the underplay of religious sensibilities. Brands can ignore this only at their peril. Have you faced in China religious elements or diversity of the religious elements that impact or influence the branding or the communication process?
Now, that is a very sensitive topic. Simply because this is going to be
It.
recorded and also possibly distributed. So I would prefer if I do not answer that publicly. But I think what would be interesting to note that creativity does cut across all cultures and religion, and and even with politics as well. And what we do try to do is look at the consumer sentiment, not in terms of what motivates them from a political but a cultural perspective, but a consumer perspective in terms of what they like as a brand. So I would say cut through that and don't even touch it.
Oh, Turab. Thank you, Turab.
Please explain.
The complexity of religion has become so much in India that even colors are now associated with religion. For example, if I use orange, I'm signifying something. If I'm using green, I'm targeting somebody else. So we have to be 10 times more cautious about the way we use anything to convey a message.
So can I ask, because clearly when you're looking at a brand, you're not going to be targeting everybody. So are the colors that represent, do the colors that might be sensitive represent your primary target audience? Or do you feel as though that might be polarizing?
We don't actually target on the basis of religion, but in case we are using any particular color in excess, it can go against the other religious guys. So we have to be a little more sensitive in terms of even using the colors. Or
Understand.
even certain actions that we take. So all those things are very, very complicated. In India, language changes every 110 kilometers. So you can imagine the complexity in terms of thinking, in terms of speaking, everything changes.
So can I ask, from your experience, how are you managing that?
We try to be as neutral as possible and never use anything in excess to ensure that we are not trampling on somebody else's sensitivity. Even words, and even I'll not take a name, but for example, a shoe brand, just since you mentioned about the shoe brand, had an ambassador, brand ambassador, whose name was a religious name. And he was asked to sign the shoe. There were riots. How can a religious person's name be signed onto a shoe? Like, for example, you have a Michael Jordan signing his shoes and giving it and selling it at a premium. Here, there were riots. So
Wow.
you have to be that sensitive in India.
Right. I must say I've never experienced a campaign that has caused that. And I would love to continue the conversation with you after this to really navigate that matter. It's a very interesting topic.
Absolutely. And
I'll
very
connect both
scary
of
too.
you.
Very scary too.
Yes.
I'll send over the email address of Turab. I have another, because here we talk about the complexity, about the way you try to analyze, how do you filter through all of that. So what are the techniques? What are the processes that someone can use? And we have a question here from Wai Yin Kwok, saying that you got such a bold and distinctive creative style. What inspires your work, and what does your creative process look like when developing such impactful projects? Are there particular tools or methods you rely on to ignite innovation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And thanks, Wayne, for joining and also asking a question. I think I would also go back to this because this is really the foundation of our own creative process that we use on a daily basis. Now, clearly, there are other tools. There's Reframe the Brief, there's also Mind Map, and there's a whole bunch of innovative, creative framework that we would apply depending on the style of the project. But in a nutshell, what we do try to do is make sure that the creative style that we produce is going to be on brand for the client. We do have a bold style. It is really in your face, it's colorful, and coincidentally, those are the two case studies that I picked today. But at the same time, we as creatives, we need to be able to adapt our own individual style according to the brand. So it even goes back to making sure that we do the competitor research and the brand audit extremely well. So even as we are doing these 5 steps, what the client knows is the brand is the brand strategy, is the brand development, and then also the creative excellence. So every step of the way is ensuring that we are on brand and delivering messages and campaigns.
Wouldn't recommend it.
Hi, Craig. And so therefore, ensuring that the style is going to be adjusted to the specific client. Often we work with the same type of clients within the same industry. So we work with fashion, we work with most of the sports brands, and we work with, B2B and tech. However, every single localization, also creative and branding campaign is completely different because we are following the brand DNA. I hope that answers your question, Wayne.
Now I was on mute. Welcome, Craig from Dubai. Good to have you on the call as well. We're almost through it. Natalie, if you agree, because it's already 11 o'clock, I don't know how your agenda is, but we have another interesting question on data.
Sure.
So this is Murtasa Ahmed, who says, how does one carve out originality in a space where data accessibility has no bounds? Is there a structure to come up with strategy in a world full of ideas already being implemented?
Can you please clarify the question?
Murtasa, would you like to say something? If you would like to unmute yourself, you're very welcome. We hear you barely. I cannot hear you, unfortunately. But maybe you can write something in the message box if you agree. I quickly take another question from Wouter. Wouter from Amsterdam. Hello, Wouter. How are you doing? Wouter wanted to come back to the beginning of your presentation when you talked about think different. So finally, did Apple do something specific? What did they do to really enter the market? How did they succeed in doing this? How did they localize their advertising communication in China? Was there a need to do it?
I think Apple is a unicorn. I think they were, really ahead of their game. They talked about, the aesthetics, the beauty of what, Microsoft was unable to do at the time. And what was really, really interesting was it created this brand image that you need to have it if you were cool, if you were creative, and it went into the alternatives. As you know, Microsoft, when we think about it, it's really for the corporate world. However, Apple came in with, extremely amazing fonts. Only because Steve Jobs learned calligraphy. He went to an art class and was extremely excited about calligraphy, which we all know about it. And that is what happened, was that Apple was seen as a creative for a creative alternative for individuals who wanted something beautiful, who wanted something different from the corporate world. So even here in our team, many people, and I'm sure many on this call, may be using Apple simply because of the distinct, I would say, options that allows creative individuals to pursue. So I would honestly believe that Apple created an alternative solution that they thought people would want.
Thank you very much. I hope this answered Wouter's question. Hey, Wouter. So
Nice to meet you. Thanks for
4 minutes
joining.
past 11. So maybe just a last question, because I know that time is running out for everybody. Surely there would be more questions, because it's just such an interesting presentation that you have. Oh, I have a number of more questions. Let me see. Okay, just for Murtaza, he continued to see, I mean, content and communication brands. So content and communication brands use to connect with consumers. So from an experiential marketing point of view, how can one develop original strategies? From a content communication brands used to connect with consumers. Experiential marketing. I don't know if it's clearer for you, Natalie?
No, can we simplify the question a little bit, please?
Okay, I'll switch to another one. We have Sergey. Sergey, who asks, you have another of negative cases or cases where there was a huge challenge. Do you have some of the great examples? Is there any great example where you say, this is the way a European campaign worked in the Asian market? So the question was from Sergey. You showed us a couple of negative cases when the European brands entered the Chinese market. Do you have the opposite cases or any European campaign that needs a localization in China?
Specific European, I would need to think about that. I do have some. I can't think about it right now, but I'll come back to you, Sergey. And thank you so much for asking the question.
Wonderful. Let me quickly go through this, and we have another need to drop off. So let's finish, if you're okay, with Diff. This is Ted from Diff Creative Consultants. And this would then, unfortunately, be the last question. I hope you can all understand, but you got the contact details of Natalie. You'll surely be able to connect with her and continue the chat offline. So Ted from Diff Creative Consultants, you may recall my session on creative business solutions at the Tribe Global Conference in Singapore a few months ago. Agree with your thoughts on China, where I spent a good amount of time. I think there are opportunities for collaboration and we'll be reaching out. Oh, this is a very positive message. I should have. But it's
Hello,
in the chat.
nice to see you again. Thanks for joining.
So this is a very positive message to finish off. Also, Gracia, who's thanking us for the meeting. So I would like to conclude by thanking you, Natalie, on this very positive note from a number of our attendees. Thanks very much for taking the time. Thanks to all of you out there.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Part of this. And we'll chat again very soon, and stay in touch with Natalie and the Blowfish.
Thank you so much for your time, for giving up your morning, your evening, and we will be sending out an insights paper to share with everybody. And if there are any other questions, feel free to drop me a line. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day. And see you again another month.
Bye.